It all started with one ridiculous mistake. Our girl literally got dragged into a novel because of some careless god. As compensation, the god offered her any wish she wanted. Sounds amazing, right? Well, she took so long thinking about the perfect wish that she completely forgot about it. And honestly, she didn't care that much anyway. So instead, she played the game her own way. Using her knowledge of the story, she climbed all the way to the top, standing beside a very handsome male lead. Together, they reached the perfect ending everyone dreams of. A happily ever after. Except that wasn't the end. Because after the ending, reality hit hard. Nobles were still scheming behind her back, and her so-called perfect husband? Way too possessive for comfort. Living like that slowly wore her down, until she finally made a bold choice. She divorced him. Still, not everything in her life was miserable. There was one thing she truly treasured. Letters from the Grand Duke. Every time she read one, her chest would warm, like his sincerity was quietly reaching her through the paper. Pellis Termain, the Grand Duke of the North, was infamous among nobles. They mocked him as the Northern Beast, avoiding him like he was some kind of monster. And yet, to her he was different. Even though they had never met, he became her closest friend, the only one who seemed to truly understand her. It all started with a simple letter she sent after becoming empress. At the time, it was just basic courtesy, thanking him for not competing for the throne. But his reply? Unexpectedly warm, thoughtful, encouraging. And from that moment on, something quietly grew between them. Letter by letter, they got closer. They shared updates about their lives, gave each other advice, and sometimes talked about nothing at all. It was simple, but real. Because the truth was, she wasn't as strong as everyone believed. Being empress terrified her. But somehow, with the Grand Duke supporting her from afar, she found the strength to keep going. Just like that, 5 years passed. Eventually, she decided it was time to finally meet him. But the Grand Duke refused. He was distantly related to the emperor she had overthrown, and even if they weren't close, rumors would spread the moment they were seen together. She didn't care about rumors. But him? Stubborn to the core. And honestly, that just made her more curious. To her, this was a fantasy romance story. A man with elegant handwriting and such a kind personality. There was no way he wasn't handsome. So she wondered, just once, couldn't they meet? At one point, she even considered using her authority to summon him. But as she started writing that order, she paused, then crushed the letter in her hand. Forcing him would only ruin what they had. So instead, she wrote something sincere, saying that maybe one day, when politics no longer mattered, she hoped they could meet, simply as friends. After sending it, she could only stare out the window. Because here she was, an empress who couldn't even meet the one person she cared about most. For a brief moment, she even thought about abandoning the throne altogether. But if she stepped down, the empire would fall apart. And ironically, things were about to fall apart anyway. Without warning, a hooded figure appeared behind her. It was her crazy ex-husband. Before she could even react, he drew his sword and calmly declared, if he couldn't have her, no one could. And in the blink of an eye, her life was cut short. In her final moments, only one thought remained. If she had known it would end like this, she would have done anything to meet the Grand Duke. Desperate, she begged the god for one more chance at a happy life. And just like that, she was sent back to the beginning. The moment she opened her eyes, Lithera went straight to the point. She sent a marriage proposal to the one man she had always wanted to meet. Somewhere deep in the frozen north, Lithera pushed through thick snow, making her way to the Grand Duke's territory. By the time she arrived, she was already exhausted. A man stepped out and asked, almost bluntly, if she was the one who proposed marriage. Lithera instantly froze, because standing right in front of her was the Grand Duke Pellis Termain himself. He explained he wanted to meet her in person before deciding anything, which was why he called her all the way here. Fair enough. But the moment she actually looked at him, that image she built in her head completely shattered. Instead of the refined, handsome noble she imagined, what she got was a man with a terrifying stare, a thick wild beard and a face marked with scars. And to make things worse, he immediately warned her to leave, coldly. like he was giving her one last chance to run before things got ugly. So yeah, the contract marriage? Already off to a great start. Lithera just stood there, silently taking him in. For a split second, she genuinely wondered if she had somehow walked into a horror story instead of a romance. But then reality hit her. She was judging him way too fast. Taking a breath, she steadied herself and politely asked him to lead the way inside. They had something important to talk about after all. As they walked, Pellis didn't stop warning her. He kept telling her she could still turn back, that no one would blame her, that she could change her mind any time. But she didn't stop. She had already decided. Inside the castle, things didn't exactly get better. Lithera glanced around, and something immediately felt off. The atmosphere was really strange. Before she could dwell on it, Pellis casually apologized, saying they weren't prepared to welcome guests. It had been a long time since anyone visited. That didn't help at all. If anything, it made everything feel even more unsettling. Was she shaking because she was scared? Or just because it was freezing? Even the servants and knights gave her this uneasy feeling, like she had stepped into a completely different world. At that point, she couldn't help but wonder, did she make a mistake trusting those letters? Because this place felt nothing like the warmth she imagined. Once they reached a room, Pellis didn't waste any time. He went straight to the point and asked why she proposed to him. Of course, she couldn't tell him the truth. So instead, she made something up, saying she wanted to experience life in the north. A reasonable excuse, but deep down, her real reasons were much simpler. She came here because she wanted to meet him. More importantly, she just wanted to get as far away from the imperial palace as possible. In the original story, everything revolved around it. Power struggles, corruption, endless schemes. It was the kind of place that slowly eats people alive. As Lithera calmly sipped her tea, she came to one very firm decision. She was never going back there. Especially not while that insane crown prince was still around. Just thinking about him was enough to make her stomach turn. In her previous life, she had actually become empress thanks to him. The so-called male lead had given up the throne for her, and back then, she felt nothing but gratitude. Now she'd rather not even see his face from a distance, which made the north the perfect escape. The imperial palace barely paid attention to that region. It was practically a different country. If she wanted to disappear, there was no better place. However, she couldn't exactly say all that out loud. Telling someone she knew the future would probably get her labeled a witch and burned alive. So instead, she carefully explained things to Pellis, keeping it simple. She wanted to stay as far away from the palace as possible. The less they knew about her, the safer she'd be. And that marriage was her best protection. After hearing her out, Pellis didn't look convinced. If anything, he looked concerned. He warned her that marrying him might actually make her life worse. The north wasn't some peaceful retreat. It was harsh, freezing, and crawling with monsters. Then, a bit hesitantly, he brought up the rumors about himself. The northern beast. A savage man with imperial blood, but no refinement. A monster who only knew how to kill. And if she married him, those same rumors would stick to her too. Even if it was just a contract marriage, she wouldn't come out of it untouched. With the way he described it, anyone else would have run for the door already, right? But not her. She already recognized this version of him. He wasn't trying to push her away. He was trying to protect her. This man, no matter how rough he looked, was still the same person who had comforted her through countless letters. The most sincere person she knew. That's why she didn't back down. Instead, she firmly told him that none of those problems mattered to her. In fact, she even flipped it around. To her, those so-called disadvantages were actually advantages. The constant monster threat meant the palace needed him more than he needed them. And those nasty rumors? They kept annoying nobles far, far away. From her perspective, this place was perfect. She also assured him she had thought everything through before coming there, and gently told him to stop belittling himself. Because to her, he mattered. His reputation, his status, none of that changed her opinion. After all, she came all the way to the north just to meet him. She wouldn't have done that if he wasn't worth it. And just in case he still felt uncomfortable, she even offered a way out. If being her husband would really harm her, then they could simply remain friends. With a warm smile, she added that even if friends hurt each other sometimes, that was okay too. Those words hit Pellis harder. He just stared at her, clearly shaken, then asked her to confirm. Did she really mean all that? Even after seeing him like this? Lithera admitted honestly. Yes, she had been a little scared at first. I mean, who wouldn't be? But she was certain now. He wasn't dangerous, nor did he have any intention of hurting her. And besides, in a contract marriage, appearances didn't really matter anyway. After saying all that, she suddenly got nervous. Maybe she had gone too far. So, a bit cautiously, she asked if he'd prefer her to leave instead. For a moment, everything went quiet. Then Pellis suddenly stood up. He hesitated, before firmly saying, no, he didn't want her to leave. There was something she needed to explain first. Then he revealed a pile of letters. He admitted he hadn't wanted to bring it up the moment she arrived. But this was the real reason he had called her here. Looking straight at her, he asked, did she recognize them? The moment Lithera saw them, her entire body froze. Those letters were all the ones she had sent him. Every single one. Her mind began to race. Why were her letters here? Now let's shift to the Grand Duke's perspective, the day before Lithera's proposal letter arrived. That day, Pellis received an invitation from the Imperial Palace. Without even sparing it a second glance, he ordered his butler to throw it away. But the butler hesitated, explaining that this wasn't a simple invitation. It was an imperial order. Even then, Pellis didn't budge. Order or not, it meant nothing to him. He had no intention of going. To him, it was nothing more than yet another form of mockery. With that, he dismissed the matter entirely, sending the servant away and retreating into the silence of his room. Frustration weighed heavily on him. Why couldn't they just leave him alone? He had no interest in the petty power struggles of the Imperial Palace, no desire to get tangled in their schemes. That place was nothing but an inhuman golden jungle, a suffocating world he wanted no part of. There might have been someone he could have spoken to, but he knew better than to hope for that. After all, who would willingly approach the Northern Beast, a man shunned by every noble in the Empire? As those thoughts lingered, his gaze slowly drifted toward a drawer nearby, where a faint glow flickered from within. Curious, he opened it. Inside lay a stack of letters, glowing softly like sunlight breaking through the dark. He stared at them, completely baffled. What were these letters? And now, after hearing his explanation about how the letters mysteriously appeared, Lithera stands there, visibly shaken. She asks again, just to be certain. Did they really just appear out of nowhere? Pellis admits it sounds unbelievable even to him. Lithera can't hide her frustration toward the idiot god. If he were going to send her back in time, why didn't he bring Pellis with her too? What if he thinks she's a witch? Suddenly, Pellis gently places a hand on Lithera's shoulder, asking if she's okay. Almost immediately, he pulls his hand back, apologizing for the contact, and explaining that she looked quite shocked. Lithera is briefly taken aback, but she quickly regains her composure, assuring him that she's fine, just a little caught off guard. Pellis reassures her that he's not accusing her of anything. He simply wants to confirm whether she is truly the person mentioned in those letters, from the future. So she suggests that he sit down first, since she has a long story to tell. After taking the time to explain everything, Pellis gradually begins to grasp the concept of her reincarnation. Even so, Lithera still feels uncertain, worried that it all sounds too unbelievable for him to fully accept. Trying to convince him, she excitedly suggests giving him hints about future events. If those events come true, it would prove her claims. But before she can continue, Pellis stops her. He tells her there's no need for such demonstrations. He reveals that he has already consulted a priest to examine the letters. A flashback reveals that the priest was astonished by their aura, claiming he had never encountered such powerful holy energy before. Even without reading their contents, the priest recognized their significance and advised Pellis to treasure them as sacred relics. Pellis had unknowingly received letters from the future, written by Lithera, who considered him a close friend. Through those letters, they shared casual conversations, heartfelt advice, and even the occasional harsh truth. Most of the time, they simply spoke honestly about their feelings, free from political games. It was a pure and genuine friendship. Pellis couldn't help but wonder why fate had allowed him to receive those letters, why he had been shown a glimpse of a future friend. Was it a sign from a higher being, urging him to find her? The thought left him conflicted and frustrated, unsure of what he was supposed to do after finally meeting her. But before he could dwell on it any further, the butler interrupted him with news of a letter from the Murto household. Pellis immediately asked if it was from Lithera. When the servant confirmed it, Pellis didn't hesitate. He snatched the letter and opened it right away. Confusion washed over him. The letter had arrived 1 year earlier than expected. But what shocked him even more was its contents. It was a marriage proposal. Back in the present, Pellis nervously admits to Lithera that when he received her proposal, he was completely stunned, even more shocked than when he first discovered the letters from the future. He awkwardly confesses that no one had ever offered him a political marriage before. While he apologizes, Lithera can't help but think that Pellis is far more innocent than he appears. Pellis, however, reasons that since Lithera has seen the future, she should be able to make a rational decision about what's best for herself. Originally, he had planned to return the letters, accept whatever judgment she might have for him, and then forget everything. But now, he has changed his mind. Stepping closer to Lithera, he tells her that if she truly believes she won't regret it, then he would gladly accept her proposal. In her final letter from the previous timeline, Lithera had wished that they could meet as friends. Since she was sent back in time immediately after that, it means the other Pellis must have received her last letter, along with news of her death. That realization settles it. Pellis decides he won't turn her away, not if it means neither of them will have any regrets. With a bright smile, Lithera tells him to look forward to becoming her husband. Taking his hand, she asks if she can call him by his name instead. It feels too distant to be formal with a friend. While avoiding eye contact, Pellis agrees. Then, in a surprising turn, he says he should show her more respect. After all, she has lived 3 lives and is technically much older than him. So he starts calling her ma'am. It literally makes her sound like a strict schoolteacher, so she quickly insists that he just call her Lithera instead. Though he finds it a bit impolite, Pellis awkwardly agrees. With that settled, they proceed to sign their marriage contract. Pellis wonders if they can skip the wedding ceremony altogether, but Lithera reassures him that it's perfectly fine. After all, their marriage exists only on paper, and it would be even more awkward if he eventually found someone he truly loved and they had to divorce. Pellis is visibly taken aback by her words and immediately shuts the idea down. Then he asks if he had a wife in her previous life. She says Pellis hadn't, at least from what she knew before her death. But then again, no one knows what the future holds. With a confident smile, she tells him that if he ever finds someone, he should let her know first, and she'll have the divorce papers ready within an hour. Poor man gets hit with a divorce threat, just minutes after sealing his marriage. As they stroll through the hallway, Pellis tells Lithera that he will introduce her to the main servants. He assures her that if she needs anything, she should ask them without hesitation. When they meet the staff, Pellis introduces the butler and the maid. However, it's immediately clear from their expressions that they are far from welcoming. Still, Pellis proudly presents Lithera as the new Grand Duchess and entrusts her care to them. Lithera recalls the unsettling stares she received when she first arrived, and now the servants begin whispering among themselves, growing increasingly bold as they openly express their disapproval of the marriage. Both Pellis and Lithera are completely caught off guard. Jürgen even goes so far as to suggest that Lithera return to the south immediately. Are they seriously trying to get rid of her already? Barely holding back his frustration, Pellis firmly states that he will not tolerate such blatant disrespect. Unfazed, Jürgen stands his ground. He insists that their minds are made up, and that the lady deserves far better. The couple is left speechless. Jürgen then expresses his disappointment in Pellis, admitting that while he had encouraged him to find a wife, he never expected him to take advantage of a vulnerable woman. Meanwhile, Nikki steps closer to Lithera, gently taking her hands and whispering that if she wants to escape, all she has to do is say the word. They are willing to risk their lives to help her. At that moment, Lithera finally understands. Those earlier stares weren't hostility. They were concern. They thought she was terrified. Pellis quickly interjects, insisting that the servants are worrying over nothing. Frustrated, he covers his face with his hand and apologizes to Lithera. Lithera shakes her head, feeling that she should be the one apologizing for causing such a misunderstanding. Without thinking much, she casually calls him by his nickname, Pell. Both servants practically drop their jaws upon hearing it. Lithera smiles warmly, thanking them for their concern, and firmly declares that she has no intention of returning south, even revealing the truth. This marriage was her idea. Pellis immediately turns bright red as he stammers, explaining that saying it like that will only deepen the misunderstanding. Like it was no biggie, she simply said it again. Now Lithera appears utterly smitten, bold enough to propose to a man who had never received a single offer before. Embarrassed, the servants quickly apologize for their earlier objections. Even Pellis tries to correct their assumptions, but the two are already convinced. Seeing what they believe to be genuine affection, they sincerely wish the couple a lifetime of happiness together. As night settles in, Pellis brings up what's been bothering him. Those servants are definitely getting the wrong idea about their relationship, and it might get worse. But Lithera just brushes it off like it's nothing. If anything, she finds it a little sweet. To her, it just means the servants see him as someone worthy of being loved. For a moment, it reminds her why she came here in the first place, to keep things simple. No romance, no complicated feelings, just pure friendship. She admits she still believes in that, but at the same time, she can't deny the truth. People's feelings can change, and maybe someday, what they have now could turn into something more. Hearing that, Pellis gently reminds her of everything she has been through. If people keep misunderstanding their relationship, it might end up hurting her in the end. She admits it. The thought of loving someone terrifies her. Even imagining it makes her chest tighten. She knows all too well how something warm can turn into something painful. But instead of backing away, she steps closer, then suddenly blurts out what she really feels. She doesn't want her fear to make people see him as unlovable. She doesn't want anyone to misunderstand who he is, because to her, he's someone precious, a friend she truly values. That's when Pellis drops to one knee, gently takes her hands, and looks straight at her. Even if this marriage is just a contract, even if they never become anything more than friends, as long as they are husband and wife, he will stay by her side. He will never abandon her. These weren't just empty words. Back when she took the throne, people from the old regime approached him, urging him to rebel. They insisted she wasn't the rightful ruler. He could have taken power for himself if he easily wanted, but he didn't. He rejected them, and fought back against every single one. When she tried to thank him back then, he refused any reward, said he was just doing his duty. The only thing he ever wished for was to remain loyal to her. And now, in this life, he's making that same promise again. Unshaken, unconditional, without expecting anything in return. He even makes it clear, he's not trying to bind her to anything. If one day she wants to leave, if she finds someone else, he'll let her go. Lithera can't hold back anymore. She suddenly throws herself into his arms, hugging him tightly. This is why she wanted to meet him so badly, because she already knew this is the kind of person he is. Someone she could trust, someone who would never hurt her. She tells him honestly, even if all she can offer right now is friendship, she'll do everything she can to repay his loyalty. As long as she stays by his side, she knows she'll find happiness. And more than that, she wants him to be happy too. For a brief second, Pellis hesitates. Then slowly, he hugs her back and promises he'll do everything he can to be worthy of the trust she's given him. You'd think after all that emotional bonding, things would finally calm down, right? Absolutely not. The real enemy shows up, and it's not just a little chilly cold. We're talking bone-freezing, soul-leaving-your-body kind of cold. Our girl is shivering like crazy, her teeth clattering nonstop, feeling like her bones are turning into icicles. At this point, she can't help but wonder, is this really how her third life ends? Frozen to death in the north? Meanwhile, Pellis is just existing, no blanket, no problem. Seriously, what is this man made of? Noticing her suffering, Pellis walks over and asks the obvious, if she's cold. I mean, He can practically hear her teeth playing percussion at this point. Without wasting time, he wraps her up in a thick fur blanket. Lithera, a bit embarrassed, admits she's still not used to the northern weather. Pellis promises to have the heating increased tomorrow. For now, she's bundled up so tightly she basically looks like a human burrito. And yet, she's still freezing. Pellis pauses, clearly at a loss. He even apologizes, unsure what else he can do. Apparently, he's never met someone this weak against the cold. Left with no other option, Lithera hesitates, then awkwardly loosens the blanket and asks if she can borrow his body heat. So now, they're awkwardly holding each other. And Pellis, being Pellis, shyly asks if this is actually supposed to work. Lithera nods, already feeling the warmth returning, casually comparing him to a giant black bear, which fits him a little too well. Before long, she drifts off to sleep, but Pellis stays awake. Moments like this were never something he allowed himself to imagine. He had always accepted that he'd live alone. Then the memories creep in, his parents' deaths, and his father's final warning, never trust anyone. But here he is, wanting to trust Lithera, just as much as she believes in him. Suddenly, Lithera starts mumbling in her sleep. Her voice trembles as she speaks of her fear of dying, her teeth grinding harshly. Pellis can't help but wonder if she's reliving that moment. Her encounter with the Crown Prince Everett, the man who once ruined her life, the very person she called the male lead of that world. As the grinding grows worse, worry flickers across his face. At this rate, she might actually hurt herself. So, carefully, he reaches out, gently opening her mouth and placing his finger between her teeth to stop the grinding. Even if it means doing this every night. As long as she can sleep peacefully, it's worth it. Morning comes, and the first thing Lithera feels is guilt. She immediately apologizes, worried she kept him awake all night. Pellis says it's nothing because he's used to it. In fact, he literally slept through a month of monster growls. Meanwhile, I can't even nap through a single mosquito. What kind of man did she just marry? Still worried, she suggests that next time he at least use a towel instead of his hand. Pellis shrugs it off, casually comparing it to a monster bite. Totally normal, right? When she apologizes again, he suddenly uses her own words against her, reminding her that friends are allowed to hurt each other sometimes. Lithera immediately argues back. That doesn't mean she can just take advantage of him. Half joking, she even asks what he'd do if she demanded all his money. And somehow, Pellis takes it seriously. He says it might not be a bad idea, since she's clearly better at managing money than him. Now she's completely speechless. Before she can recover, he leans in even closer and adds, if she wants, he'd even give her his title. Grabbing his collar, Lithera starts shaking him in panic, telling him to stop being such a pushover. And right at that exact moment, the door opens. Jürgen steps in, announcing breakfast, then immediately freezes. Because what he sees is Lithera on top of Pellis gripping his collar, the two of them way too close for this to look even remotely normal. Is he interrupting something? Without saying a single word, he quickly backs out and shuts the door. There's absolutely no way to explain it. Outside, Jürgen returns looking completely flustered. As for Nikki? Oh, she takes one look at him and immediately understands. With a knowing expression, she casually suggests they serve breakfast a little later. During breakfast, Lithera asks Pellis if she can borrow his office for a bit. Says she has some work to do. Naturally, he asks what kind. And she just goes, she's trying to earn extra money. Soon, she's sitting in his office with a pile of documents, ready to put her future knowledge to good use. Weirdly enough, just being there feels comforting. For a brief moment, she even drifts off, remembering the letters he used to send her. Yeah, not exactly the time to get sentimental. So she snaps out of it and gets to work, flipping through papers until, finally, she finds what she's been looking for. Without wasting a second, she asks for Pellis. The butler leads her straight to the armory, mentioning that this is where Pellis usually is around this time, checking equipment and all that. Totally normal. What's not normal is what she walks into. The moment Lithera steps inside, she freezes. There he is, shirtless, just standing there like it's completely normal, muscles and battle scars on full display, as he casually turns and asks if she needs something. Lithera's brain just stops working. Noticing her reaction, Pellis immediately apologizes, clearly thinking he did something wrong. Flustered, she quickly tries to explain that she just wasn't expecting that while handing him the document. As he looks it over, she explains that she meant to give it earlier, but things got busy and she forgot. Noticing the butler still nearby, she leans in slightly and lowers her voice. She reminds him of something he once mentioned in his letters, a piece of land he had wanted but failed to acquire. It was such a small detail, but it stuck with her, because he rarely talked about what he wanted. So after coming back in time, she made sure to get it first. Pellis studies the document, confused. To him, it just looks like some random mountain. He asks if there's actually something special about it. She casually drops the answer like it's nothing. Oh, just a few diamonds. At that, Pellis practically begs her to take it back, insisting she keep it. But Lithera refuses, telling him to accept it as her dowry. Now he's panicking. He argues that the land was originally meant for her, not him. She doesn't budge. Instead, she gives him a look and asks if he's really going to reject her gift after everything she did to get it. Of course he loses. Pellis finally gives in. But now there's a new problem. His brain is already working overtime, trying to figure out how on earth he's supposed to repay something like this. As for the butler, well, let's just say he's basically wallpaper while these two have their whole moment going on. Anyway, while Lithera is peacefully settling into her new life, Pellis is out there absolutely butchering monsters with a terrible mood. He's cutting through an entire horde like it personally offended him. But honestly, the real problem isn't the monsters. Or more specifically, he still hasn't figured out how to repay his wife. He did try asking her what she wanted, but every time she just brushed it off like it was nothing. He couldn't even give her small gifts either, because she keeps buying things for herself before he even gets the chance. At this point, he feels like a raccoon trying to wash cotton candy, and just watching it disappear. All he wants is to show his gratitude, but she keeps insisting he's already done enough, for her, even in a past life. Back then, he constantly sent her gifts along with his letters. He even went as far as preparing land and building a private vacation home just for her, and he never let her repay him. Now the situation has completely flipped. Just as Pellis is about to say something to express how he feels, a knight rushes forward, urgently reporting a swarm of monsters. Snapping back to reality, he prepares for battle. Even as he fights, his thoughts remain on Lithera. She keeps saying that being with him is enough, but he just can't accept that. It leaves him restless. Determined, he tells himself that the faster they finish this, the sooner he can return. Just then, a massive monster lunges at him from behind. Pellis dodges instantly, something that surprises the other knights, because charging head-on is usually his thing. Then, as if struck by inspiration, he suddenly asks, "Would this monster's fur look good in pink?" The knights pause for a second, then immediately catch on. Their faces light up. With matching grins, they agree. It'd look perfect. A rare spark of enthusiasm lights up his face as he declares they'll finish this quickly. Seconds later, all that can be heard are the unlucky monster's cries echoing in the background. Not long after, Lithera finds herself staring at a coat made from that very fur. She's never seen anything like it. The color alone is already eye-catching. Fresh from the bath, Pellis urges her to try it on. Feeling she can't refuse, especially considering the effort he must have put into it, Lithera wraps herself in the coat and asks if it suits her. Bathed in soft light, she seemed to glow, leaving Pellis completely mesmerized. For a split second, he even considers going out and hunting 100 more monsters. Lithera stops him immediately, laughing and telling him one is more than enough. As she looks at him, she suddenly notices just how unexpectedly cute his expression is. Smiling, she gently pats his head and tells him she'll treasure the gift, especially knowing how hard it must have been to protect the fur while fighting. That simple gesture makes he blush, and somehow, it only makes him want to give her even more. Days later, while Nikki is brushing Lithera's hair, Nikki casually mentions how much Pellis has changed since Lithera arrived, and how the entire staff is grateful for it. Naturally, Lithera gets curious. What was he like before? Nikki explains that it's not like he was cruel, but there were things that shaped him. House Termaine, despite being part of the imperial family, had been sent to the north, basically exiled to deal with monsters. Every move they made was watched. Eventually, the imperial court decided to eliminate them, leaving only the young Pellis alive. Somehow that child survived, reclaimed his position, and became the current Grand Duke. But the experience changed him. He became withdrawn, short-tempered. That's how he earned the name Northern Beast. Lithera listens carefully, then tilts her head. That doesn't sound like the Pellis she knows at all. If anything, he's quite the gentleman. Nikki just laughs. Of course he is, just not for anyone else, only her. Apparently, when other nobles visit, Pellis is so intimidating that some of them literally faint on the spot. And yes, that's not an exaggeration. Nikki admits she's personally carried out at least 5 unconscious nobles herself. Which is exactly why the staff expected the same thing when Lithera first arrived. Thankfully, they were very wrong. Then Nikki's tone softens. She gently asks Lithera to take good care of him. To the people of the North, Pellis isn't just their lord. He's someone they deeply cherish. More than anything, they want to see him finally live a happy life. After all, it's much nicer working for a happy master than a grumpy one. While strolling down the hallway alone, Lithera's thoughts begin to drift. In both her past life and her current one, Pellis has always showered her with warmth. She had assumed that was simply who he was. But now it hits her she actually knows very little about him. Curious, she wonders what others think of him as well. Lost in thought, she is suddenly interrupted by a knight greeting her. He introduces himself as Kane, a knight from the top division. Kane explains that he has wanted to thank Lithera for some time, and feels honored to finally have the chance. Lithera looks puzzled at first, but Kane quickly elaborates. He tells her that Pellis has changed significantly since her arrival. According to him, Pellis genuinely looks happier now, and seeing that brings him great joy. Kane deeply respects the Grand Duke, so witnessing that change means a lot to him. Hearing this, Lithera falls silent. It's exactly what Nikki mentioned earlier. She realizes that her husband must have lived a very lonely life. He never spoke about his true feelings, but now she understands why he constantly downplays himself. A quiet determination rises within her. Lithera promises herself she'll do even more to make him happy. As Lithera and Kane continue chatting, Pellis spots them from afar. He's just about to call out to her, but stops. Seeing her smile so brightly while talking to someone else, a wave of sadness washes over him. It feels like standing in the middle of a blizzard, overwhelmed by the cold. No matter how much he wants to do for her, he feels he has very little to offer. Silently, he turns and walks away, but Lithera notices. Quickly, she calls out his name and rushes after him, saying she had actually been hoping to talk to him. Pellis barely glances at her before turning his face away and quickening his pace. In his mind, he's already decided their marriage will only harm her. It's not too late for her to find someone better. Trying to catch up, Lithera asks what's wrong, but Pellis keeps avoiding her, refusing to answer. Eventually, unable to keep up, Lithera stumbles and drops to her knees, still calling out for him to stop. That's when Pellis finally reaches out his hand. Concerned, he asks if she's okay. He apologizes, saying he never meant to make her uncomfortable. With determination, she grabs his clothes and demands to know why he's been avoiding her, declaring that he can't run away from her anymore. Meeting his gaze, she tells him firmly that whatever the problem is, they can face it together. Pellis looks away, embarrassed and unable to put his feelings into words. Lithera understands. So she tells him that Nikki and Kane shared stories about his past, and about how much he's changed since she came into his life. He lowers his head, belittling himself. He calls himself a fool trapped in isolation, admitting he struggles to express himself in any way other than anger, and still doesn't know how to properly treat her. He even criticizes his appearance, saying he's grown used to putting himself down. Before he can spiral further, she gently lifts his chin. She tells him to stop. Then she cups his face and leans closer. Pellis blushes in confusion, probably thinking something more, only for her to suddenly headbutt him. Standing up, Lithera raises her voice and boldly calls him out, questioning how he could dare wallow in self-pity in front of her. Rubbing his head in confusion, Pellis is completely thrown off. He has no idea how things escalated like this. She keeps going and says she's tired of hearing him put himself down, pointing out that she's not some perfect prize either. After all, she has already lived 2 lives, and both ended badly. On top of that, she's technically much older than him. Trying to level the playing field, she jokes that she has no shame in marrying someone younger. Then her tone softens. She tells him that the people around him clearly care about him deeply, and that alone proves he's a good man. Extending her hand, she asks him to stop clinging to his past, because it doesn't change how she sees him. With a bright, reassuring smile, Lithera urges him to take her hand, teasingly asking if he plans to stay on the floor all day. As those words sink in, a small spark of hope flickers inside him. Hand in hand, they begin to walk together. Pellis finds himself unable to resist the warmth in the way Lithera treats him. Meanwhile, she starts internally panicking. She realizes that Pellis is beginning to grow attached to her, and she can't help but think it's her fault. She had unknowingly stepped into the classic role of saving a lonely, brooding man. Looking at him, she thinks how easily he's swayed by just a few kind words. But deep down, she simply couldn't stand seeing her friend so miserable. Part of her considers taking responsibility for him, but her past trauma still lingers, holding her back. As she struggles to figure out what's best for both of them, Pellis suddenly speaks. Opening a door for her, he gently tells her that she doesn't have to worry. If his feelings ever make her uncomfortable, she can pretend not to notice. He doesn't want to become a burden. Lithera is stunned. How can he understand her so well? Half joking, she asks if he can read her mind. As they step outside, Pellis tells her that she has already done more than enough for him, far more than he could ever ask for. Lithera admits that it might be frustrating for him. Even though she finds him incredibly precious, she's still too entangled in her past wounds to fully express herself. She even feels like a hypocrite after everything she said earlier. Pellis reassures her. He tells her he doesn't find her frustrating or foolish at all. Holding her hands firmly, he looks straight into her eyes and tells her not to exhaust herself worrying about everything. Right now, he's already happier than he ever thought he could be, and he doesn't want to be the reason she has any regrets. Lithera looks away, feeling guilty, and takes a small step back to create some distance. She quietly admits that even though she promised to stay by his side, she tends to act on her own terms. Just as the mood turns serious, her foot suddenly gets stuck in the snow. That was such an embarrassing moment. Instead of laughing, he suddenly lifts her to help her out. Caught off guard, she becomes even more flustered, and quickly asks him to put her down. Concerned, he points out that with this much snow, she might get stuck again, and suggests they head back inside. Back in their cozy room, the fireplace is already roaring. Pellis helps Lithera remove her boots and prepares hot water to warm her up. Gently, he places her foot into the basin. She quickly insists she can manage on her own, but knowing how poorly she handles the cold, Pellis softly asks her to let him take care of it. To her, it's just a bit of snow, nothing serious. She thinks he's being overly protective. As he rolls up his sleeves, flexing his muscular arms, Lithera can't help but stare in awe. Telling her to relax, he begins massaging her foot. His gentle touch eases the tension, warmth slowly spreading through her body. As she watches his hands, she notices the rough calluses covering them. Pellis asks if they bother her. Of course they don't. She knows he must have lived a much harsher life than she ever did. Comparing his hands to her own, soft, unscarred, and flawless, she feels that all her complaints about her life must sound trivial to him. Pellis tells her that not all wounds are visible on the outside. He adds that he admires her for continuing to live, even after experiencing death twice, something even the strongest warriors would struggle with. After drying her feet with a towel, he gently advises her not to compare herself to others. Lithera is deeply touched by his words, and finds herself unable to respond. Noticing her silence, Pellis hesitantly asks if he said something wrong, but Lithera shakes her head. She tells him she actually feels comforted. She never expected someone to understand her so well. Yes, she has suffered a lot, but she's still here, and she should be proud of that. Reaching out, she gently cups his face and asks him to be patient with her, promising that she will overcome her struggles someday. Then she softly places a kiss on his forehead. She smiles, believing that one day she'll be able to fully return his feelings. Noticing his stunned expression, she playfully teases him, confidently saying that she thinks they could make a great couple. Blushing, Pellis promises that he'll do his best to be a good husband. Meanwhile, news of the northern beast taking a wife spreads like wildfire among the nobles. They gossip endlessly about Lithera, labeling her an oddity for never making her debut in high society despite being in her 20s. Some even mockingly call them the perfect match, pairing the northern beast with what they call his southern counterpart. Truly, the rumors are working overtime. When Baron Luther Murto, Lithera's father, hears these rumors, he is furious. He refuses to believe that his daughter would marry such a man. Driven by anger and concern, he decides to travel north and bring her back himself, clearly skipping the "let's calm down" first option. Her mother, Maureen Murto, suggests sending a letter instead, but the Baron refuses. He doesn't care about rumors. He only cares about his daughter's safety. Maureen tries to reassure him, saying the rumors about the Grand Duke are likely exaggerated. But the Baron remembers what he personally witnessed at a palace banquet, when the Grand Duke caused chaos and terrified everyone present. No one ever spoke of that night again, which honestly says everything. Maureen questions why he was never punished, only to recall that the Emperor had actually found the whole incident amusing. Since then, the Grand Duke has remained in the north. Still, the Baron cannot understand why Lithera would marry such a man. In his mind, she might be in danger. Maureen even starts imagining rescuing her daughter like a princess trapped by a villain, her imagination clearly running a full drama series. Fast forward to when the two arrive at the Grand Duke's estate. Holding her husband's hand, Lithera is completely caught off guard when she sees her parents. Ever the gentleman, Pellis apologizes for the lack of preparation and politely assures them they may request anything they need. Both of Lithera's parents can't believe what they are seeing. Their daughter looks perfectly fine. And Pellis, the so-called northern beast, is calm and composed, even treating her like a princess. So where exactly is the beast? Once inside, Pellis politely asks for the reason for their visit. Maureen answers bluntly. They were worried about their daughter. The Baron looks uneasy at her directness. Confused, Lithera asks what they mean. Her mother explains they were concerned about her frail health and were shocked when she suddenly disappeared, only to later hear she had gone to the freezing north. In both the original story and her previous life, Lithera's parents barely paid attention to her, and now, this might be the most they've ever spoken to her. Unable to hold back, she asks why they suddenly care. Her father slams the table. Luther explains that ever since she was born, she had been constantly sick, on the verge of death multiple times. That's why he never introduced her to society and ignored the gossip surrounding her. Raising his voice, he expresses his frustration. How could she think he didn't care, only to go and marry someone like the northern beast? Pellis steps in, calmly summarizing the situation. So, essentially, her father disapproves of him, straight to the point. Realizing he may have gone too far, the Baron quickly apologizes. To everyone's surprise, Pellis remains composed. He tells them they can speak freely without worrying about hurting his feelings. He's used to it. But Lithera interrupts, telling Pellis that it's okay for him to be upset by such comments. He simply shakes his head. He believes he brought that reputation upon himself. And as her husband, it's his duty to remain respectful toward her father. He says this shyly. This completely shocks Luther, so much so that he faints on the spot. Pellis immediately panics, apologizing for the situation like this is somehow his fault. Meanwhile, Maureen casually pushes her unconscious husband aside and demands to know how the two of them ended up married. Priorities. Reluctantly, Lithera answers honestly, saying they were connected in a past life. Technically not a lie, but definitely not convincing. Her mother doesn't buy it. So she quickly changes her story, claiming it was love at first sight during her travels. Still unconvinced, Maureen points out that Pellis doesn't match the type of men Lithera usually prefers. Wait, since when did they even discuss her preferences? Pellis, quietly listening, catches onto one key detail. She likes handsome men. Flustered, Lithera immediately denies it and even blames her mother for bringing it up in front of her husband. Her mother sighs. She says she won't force Lithera to tell the truth, but at the very least, she should have informed them about the marriage. Finding out through rumors was disappointing. Lithera lowers her head and apologizes. She admits she assumed things would be the same as before. that they wouldn't care. She never expected this reaction. While sipping her tea, Maureen tells her there's no need to apologize. In fact, they were at fault for never expressing their feelings properly. More than anything, she's simply relieved to see her daughter living well in the north. Smiling brightly, Lithera holds her husband's hand and says she feels truly comfortable here, all thanks to him. Seeing this, her mother finally relaxes. To her, they look like a genuinely happy couple. Glancing at her still unconscious and honestly overdramatic husband, she then asks if they can stay for a few days. Pellis warmly agrees. They are welcome to stay as long as they like. As night falls, our sweet couple sits together, talking about everything that happened during the day. Lithera admits she was surprised by her parents' sudden visit and apologizes for putting Pellis in such an awkward situation. Pellis smiles and brushes it off, saying it's no big deal. After all, he knew he would have to meet his in-laws eventually. Curious, he asks about something her father mentioned earlier, about how she almost died as a child. She explains that when she reincarnated, it consumed the wish she had been granted before. The protective blessing that once kept her safe nearly disappeared, leaving her fragile body to endure everything on its own. She pauses, then admits she never expected that to make her parents worry about her even more. Pellis looks troubled, but Lithera quickly reassures him that she's fine now. Still, he quietly says it couldn't have been easy for her. Lithera shakes her head and insists it wasn't as bad as he thinks. She managed to endure it, because she kept thinking about the letters they once shared. With a bright smile, she tells him that he was the reason she was able to get through it. A little shyly, she adds that if it weren't for her lingering trauma, she might have properly proposed to him, instead of settling for a contract marriage. That makes Pellis blush instantly. Leaning closer, he softly tells her that he wants to continue being someone she can rely on, someone who supports her even more. As they relax together on the bed, they begin discussing how to change her father's opinion of Pellis. Resting her head on his lap, Lithera suddenly suggests an idea. They should show everyone how well they get along. In other words, they should go on a date. Pellis looks doubtful, unsure if it will really work, but Lithera insists it's worth trying. So in the end, he agrees. Not long after, they notice the Baron secretly following them. Instead of avoiding Pellis, his father-in-law is sticking close, which he takes as a good sign. Meanwhile, the Baron is convinced he's in full stealth mode. He refuses to believe Pellis's gentle behavior is real, convinced it's all an act. He follows them in the least subtle way possible, basically tailing them like a lost NPC. And yet, he still finds nothing suspicious. Maureen, watching this unfold, tells him to stop immediately. However, convinced he hasn't been noticed, he whispers for her to stay quiet, claiming she's ruining his cover. Of course, Pellis hears everything. He just chooses peace. Even as Maureen reassures him, the Baron remains convinced something shady is going on. So she gives up and joins the happy couple instead. They chat casually, while the Baron continues spiraling in the background. Looking around, he spots the butler and Nikki whispering later. He overhears words like orders and keep it hidden, and suddenly, in his mind, this turns into a full conspiracy. Determined, he follows them and hides behind a curtain. The butler reports to Pellis that everything is ready. Instead of answering, Pellis suddenly glances at the curtain, muttering about the spy watching them. The Baron's heart starts pounding as he realizes he's been caught, the curtain slowly being pulled aside. Pellis just sighs, disappointed the secret came out like this, and that the Baron really had to find out this way. Closing his eyes, Luther braces for absolute disaster, only to open them and find a beautifully prepared banquet hall instead. He really scared himself for nothing. Pellis awkwardly explains he prepared it as a surprise dinner for Lithera's parents. He even scolds the staff, like this whole thing wasn't just exposed. At that, Nikki quickly reveals the truth. They intentionally led the Baron there, hoping to clear up his misunderstandings, since Pellis had been troubled by his constant spying. Realizing what just happened, the Baron stands there in stunned silence. He had completely misjudged everything. After a moment, he asks why Pellis didn't get angry, even after being doubted and followed like that. He even wonders if Pellis looked down on him for being just a Baron. Pellis immediately denies it. Instead, he says he understands the suspicion, and that it actually warms his heart to know Lithera's parents care so much about her. That hits harder than expected. For the first time, the Baron believes him. Sitting down, he admits his daughter never got to experience high society due to her frail health. She spent most of her life isolated. Then he makes a request. Pellis should host a grand banquet for her. Pellis agrees without hesitation. But wait, the Baron isn't done yet. He suddenly stands up and demands one more thing. Pellis needs to fix his scruffy appearance. At this point, he's basically Lithera 2.0, just as good at nagging. A few minutes later, Lithera receives news about the banquet, and she's taken aback. Because her husband never mentioned any of this, Nikki reveals that Pellis told them to keep it a secret to make it a surprise. And somehow, they actually succeeded. With Nikki's help, Lithera gets dressed up beautifully, though she can't help but worry since it's been decades since she last dressed like this. In a rush to reach the hall, she runs into Pellis halfway and freezes. He's wearing a matching outfit, his hair neatly tied, and even his beard is properly groomed. Wait, who is this attractive man? Pellis explains he was on his way to pick her up, but had to change first. Then he starts doubting himself, wondering if the look even suits him, and worrying he might embarrass her. Meanwhile, Lithera is just standing there, completely captivated, unable to take her eyes off him. He just upgraded to main character visuals. She quickly reassures him, saying he looks incredibly charming, almost like a model. Relieved, Pellis teases her, joking that he's the pretty one now, repeating it just enough to make her flustered. As they step into the banquet hall, Lithera's parents and the northern folks greet them warmly, clearly happy to see them. Lithera, however, is stunned by the number of guests. She thought this was just a family dinner, not a full event. Pellis explains that since it's been a while since they held a banquet, he invited the servants and knights too, because why not go all out? He adds that since they never had a wedding, he wanted to make this grand to show how much he treasures her. When he nervously wonders if he went too far, Lithera reassures him, and casually says she might need to teach him how to be more selfish. Extending her hand, she suggests they dance. Pellis takes her hand, but pauses, hesitating to kiss it. She notices and gently reassures him to act normally. After all, she trusts him completely. With a soft kiss on her hand, he asks her to dance again, and Lithera happily agrees. Thinking back to when they first met, she never imagined things would turn out like this. And now, they actually look like a real couple. Meanwhile, the Baron watches his daughter dancing happily, and immediately gets emotional. Yes, he's tearing up. He never thought he'd see this day. And he's not alone. Kane and the butler are also tearing up, watching their master finally look genuinely happy. At this point, it's basically a group crying session. Noticing all this, Maureen calmly agrees. It truly is wonderful to see the two of them so happy together. After the banquet, the couple finally get some quiet time together, still lingering in the success of the night. Lithera looks genuinely happy, and even her parents returned home satisfied. She mentions wanting more days like that, adding that she especially liked seeing him dressed up. As she looks at him, she suddenly grabs his face and turns it from side to side, studying him closely. Pellis pauses, unsure if something is wrong. But she simply smiles and calls him handsome, teasing that without the facial hair, he might look less intimidating. Curious, she asks why he chose to look that way. Pellis explains that because of his imperial blood, he has always been a target. Anything he cares about can easily be used against him. When he was younger, a monster left a scar on his face during a hunt. After that, he noticed people paid less attention to him. That's when he realized how much nobles value appearance. So instead of fixing it, he chose to lean into it. He stopped presenting himself as a proper noble, acted rough, and showed no interest in power or politics, fully embracing the image others had of him as a savage beast. Even if it meant being alone, he accepted it. Then, thinking of Lithera, he quietly suggests that maybe he should change that now. Before the thought settles, she wraps her arms around him and tells him he doesn't need to change for anyone. She understands him as he is. Gently touching his face, she tells him he doesn't have to carry everything alone anymore. This time, she will stand beside him, They'll protect the North together. No matter how he looks, he's the man she chose, the one she wants to find happiness with. Pellis turns red at her words and pulls her into a tight embrace, declaring that the North belongs to both of them now. Anyone who tries to harm her won't get away with it. Elsewhere, the nobles gather to discuss his sudden marriage. They don't see Lithera as a threat, but Pellis is different. Because of his bloodline, they must remain cautious. Back in the North, Lithera visits her husband's office and immediately notices something unusual. He's wearing glasses. She teases him about looking older, and asks if the nobles have started bothering him since news of their marriage spread. As expected, he's buried in work. Even without interest in politics, his lineage keeps him involved. Without warning, Lithera sits on his lap, catching him completely off guard. While he's still flustered, she begins checking the documents on his desk. It doesn't take long before she recognizes the names behind them. They're the same people who betrayed her in her previous life. Now she wants revenge, not through force, but by driving them into bankruptcy. Pellis immediately offers to handle it himself, but she stops him and tells him to trust her. Then she notices a messy letter. He awkwardly admits it's for official use. That small detail reminded her of the past, how carefully he had written each letter, using his best handwriting and putting effort into every word for her. Realizing that, she felt a little touched. It meant she had truly mattered to him. And naturally, it made her wonder if she could have those letters again. At the same time, Pellis asks something he's been curious about. How did they even manage to exchange letters before, especially with her overly possessive ex-husband around? Turns out the crown prince was just too arrogant. He never saw Pellis as a threat, and assumed Lithera only pitied him. Remembering that makes her mutter complaints like a tiny hurricane, clearly furious on his behalf, and Pellis, well, he is secretly touched. Who knew someone could be this adorably angry for him? Their conversation is interrupted by the arrival of a priest, sent to check on Lithera's past illness. After examining her, he says there's no serious issue. However, he advises that she and Pellis should stay close to each other. Being near him will help restore her divine power. It could be because she had been thinking carefully before making her wish. After all, her only regret was never meeting him. Anyway, from then on, they begin spending more time together, handling work and exploring the Grand Duchy side by side. Pellis remains alert at all times, always carrying his sword in case monsters appear. With confidence, he tells her he'll protect both her and their land when needed. While walking, they come across an old fountain, now frozen from the cold. It used to be a place where people made wishes. Pellis asks if she wants to make one. What Lithera truly wishes for is simple: a peaceful life, and to live without regrets. Pellis makes his own wish quietly, for her to live happily, without regrets. Hearing that, she hides her face in his cape, flustered, and tells him to make a wish for himself instead. Gathering her courage, she realizes it's time to admit that she has fallen in love with him. Even if she can't express it with words, there are other ways to make it clear. She leans in, ready to finally show him how she feels, only for monsters to appear at that exact moment. Monsters, apparently rampant throughout the North, conveniently carry magic stones in their bodies. Because, of course, every self-respecting fantasy romance needs a little magical plot device. But seriously, what kind of plot twist is this, randomly barging in right as the confession moment is about to happen? Pellis clicks his tongue, clearly annoyed by the interruption. Lithera quickly asks where she should hide, but he decides the safest place is right beside him. Without effort, he lifts her in one arm and leaps straight into battle. Watching him fight up close, she finally understands. He truly is the strongest swordsman in the Empire. He cuts down monsters with ease, his movements precise and controlled. At the same time, he shields her with his cape, making sure no blood reaches her. Even when she worries about the sudden attack from huge monster behind, he simply treats it as child's play. When the fight ends, they land safely, and she remains completely unharmed. She feels grateful and accepts that there's nothing she can do but let him protect her. Still, she hates being the only one left spotless. She doesn't want to be just protected. She wants to be a partner, someone who can stand and fight alongside him. So she hugs him tightly and thanks him. Seeing her like that, Pellis groans and admits defeat. "I can never win against you," he mutters, utterly conquered by her stubborn cuteness. Meanwhile, the villagers watching are probably wondering if they accidentally signed up to be background extras in the couple's romance. Back at the castle, the two of them share a quiet moment together. Pellis brings up what she was about to say before they got interrupted. Instead of explaining, Lithera leans in and presses a soft kiss on his cheek. Then she simply tells him, that was it. That completely catches him off guard. He tries to brush it off as teasing, but before he can recover, she moves closer again. This time, their faces are only inches apart, as if they're about to lock lips. Yet in a blink, Lithera places her hand between them, blocking the kiss. Pellis quickly tries to walk away, clearly convinced he just got played again. But before he can escape, she grabs him just as fast. Flustered, she explains that she does want to express her feelings, but her past trauma still holds her back. So instead, she suggests something bold. Maybe he should be the one to initiate their first real kiss. Pellis goes very quiet, like he didn't hear anything at all. Unfortunately, Lithera doesn't let him escape that easily. She tells him clearly, she wants their relationship to move forward. She wants to be closer to him. That finally pushes him to act. After a moment of hesitation, he carefully asks her to tell him if she feels uncomfortable. Then he leans in. First, a gentle kiss on her forehead, then her cheek. And finally, their lips meet. For a brief moment, it feels as if the world stops. Even their heartbeats seem deafening. Actually, they literally just smooch for 2 seconds. Pellis pulls away almost immediately, his face completely red. He admits his heart feels like it's about to explode, and that's already more than he can handle. Lithera bursts out laughing, practically smacking the bed with each giggle. So, what happened to the scary guy from episode 1? Despite his strength in battle, he has such an unexpectedly adorable side. He then confesses it was his first kiss. That's why he reacted that way. Blushing, she admits that kissing him made her happy. She even tells him to refuse her if anything ever feels uncomfortable. Gently touching her face, Pellis reassures her that he's okay with everything. He just needs time to get used to it. Softly, he places another kiss on her. And now, both of them are far too nervous. Safe to say, neither of them gets much sleep that night. The next day rolls in with Lithera waking up like a full-on panda, dark circles and all, clearly losing a brutal war against sleep. But instead of finding Pellis beside her, she's greeted by a letter. Turns out, it's from him. Thoughtful as ever, he leaves her words instead of waking her. Now she gets to receive letters from Pellis in this life too, not just cling to memories from the past. He even writes that he hopes his letters can brighten her days. Honestly, that kind of effort? Dangerous. Anyone would fall harder. After writing a reply, Lithera calls for Nikki, who unfortunately has absolutely no idea how to deliver a letter to someone living in the same house. You can almost see the confusion spinning in her head. But the second Lithera casually mentions a bonus, Nikki's attitude flips instantly. Suddenly, she's ready to take on the mission like it's the most important job of her life. Money really does work miracles. Lithera hands her 2 letters, one for Pellis and another meant for a friend living out west. When that friend receives the letter, a man with long blue hair breaks into a wide grin, clearly amused, and maybe a little excited, by what he's reading. And for good reason. Lithera is asking him for help. Specifically, help in ruining a group of arrogant nobles financially. Not exactly a casual favor. Time skips ahead to the day that very friend arrives. The moment he sees Lithera, he doesn't hesitate, calls her his darling, and pulls her into a tight hug. Pellis, standing nearby, looks like his soul just left his body. His eyes practically leap out of their sockets. That reaction, completely justified. Lithera immediately pushes the man away, trying to fix the situation before it gets any worse, and quickly tells Pellis that whatever he's imagining is absolutely not what's going on. The overly friendly visitor is Cartha Weathers, a young but highly successful businessman from the West. In the original plot, he is one of Lithera's potential love interests. They have great chemistry when it comes to money, and he's known for being discreet, which is exactly why Lithera trusts him enough to befriend him in both her past life and this one. Meanwhile, Pellis is silently losing his patience watching Cartha cling to his wife like that, so he steps in and pulls him away. It's about as much as he can do, considering this is the same man who helped Lithera reunite with him in this life. Trying to stay polite, Pellis forces out a smile and welcomes him. A very convincing smile, if your goal is to terrify someone. Because the second Kartha sees it, he looks like he's calculating his chances of surviving the visit. Lithera quickly shifts the focus by handing Kartha the documents she and Pellis had been working on. She suggests it's better to let an expert handle things from here. Then, gently touching Pellis's face, she admits she just wants a peaceful life with him, without meddling nobles causing problems. It's a soft moment, almost too perfect, and naturally it doesn't last. Kartha jumps right in again, joking that since he can't call her darling anymore, maybe she should just make him her second instead. The expressions on Lithera and Pellis? Absolutely priceless. Pellis starts questioning his own feelings, because whatever this is, it definitely feels like jealousy. And just when things couldn't get stranger, Kartha casually adds that someone as perfect as Lithera deserves more than just one man. Unexpectedly, Pellis agrees with zero hesitation. Lithera looks like her brain just stopped working. The two men even start discussing how many admirers she could have, with Kartha suggesting at least 10. At this point, Lithera has had enough. She firmly declares that her heart has room for only one person, and that person is Pellis. No one else. That finally puts an end to that crazy conversation. After all the chaos, Kartha gets to work reviewing the documents, preparing to handle the task properly. Lithera, clearly drained, leans against Pellis as he sits beside her. From Kartha's perspective, the two of them look completely in love. But hearing that out loud stirs something uncomfortable in Lithera. Old wounds from her past life quietly resurfacing. Pellis notices the shift immediately. His expression hardens as he tells Kartha to stop making her uneasy. Things start to tense up. But before it escalates, Lithera gently reassures Pellis that she's fine. Then she calmly tells him she needs to speak with Kartha alone. Now that they're finally alone, Lithera doesn't beat around the bush. She directly asks Kartha why he's been putting her husband through all those subtle tests since the beginning. Kartha, completely at ease, explains that he simply wanted to confirm things for himself. Rumors about Pellis weren't exactly reassuring, and as Lithera's friend, he couldn't ignore them. Still, he points out that Lithera looks genuinely better now, ever since she started living there. Knowing her history, Kartha brings up her fear of love. Instead of pushing herself into a heavy confession, he suggests something simpler. Just tell Pellis that she likes him. His advice catches her off guard. Lithera realizes she really does like Pellis, yet she's never once said it aloud. Funny how the simplest truths can stay buried the longest. Not giving her time to overthink, Kartha nudges her to go talk to Pellis, who, on the other side, is quietly beating himself up over how he acted earlier. Lithera calls out to him, her voice careful, her gaze drifting away as she admits she wants to talk. Pellis, however, has already imagined 10 different worst-case scenarios. His face alone looks like he's preparing for heartbreak. His imagination really needs a break. Seeing that, Lithera quickly clears things up, assuring him that he's completely off track. They step outside for a walk, the fresh air doing little to calm Lithera's nerves. Her thoughts keep circling, searching for the right way to say what's been sitting in her heart. And then, without warning, Pellis drops to one knee. He takes her hand and confesses that he wants to stay by her side. Even if she chooses someone else, he says he'll accept it, as long as she's happy. For him, simply being near her is enough. It's touching, almost perfect, right up until he adds that he wouldn't mind being second, or even 10th. Sir, we were rooting for you until that last part. Closing the distance, Lithera finally gathers her courage. She tells him she likes him, not love. She's not there yet, and she's honest about it. She can't promise to feel as deeply as he does right now. Surprisingly, that honesty brings them closer instead of pushing them apart. Then, Lithera admits the truth. It was actually Kartha who told her to take things slowly and express her feelings little by little to Pellis. As if perfectly timed, Kartha chimes in, saying that while he might come off as playful, he does take certain things seriously. Of course, he can't resist adding a joke. Since he helped her, maybe she could return the favor by telling him she likes him too. Typical Kartha, always looking for something in return. Lithera lets out a small sigh, pointing out that if she didn't already like him as a friend, would he really still be around after everything they've been through? That question lands better than any teasing remark. Kartha simply smiles, clearly satisfied. He admits that's exactly why he grew to like her in the first place. He recalls how, even as a sickly child confined to her bed, Lithera never lost her curiosity about the outside world. That endless hunger to learn left a strong impression on him. That's what made him start helping her. And somewhere along the way, that support turned into a genuine wish for her happiness. Now, even knowing her heart already belongs to someone else, Kartha finds comfort in seeing her smile. That alone is enough for him. When he asks if love still frightens her, Lithera doesn't deny it. She smiles and admits that fear is still there. But this time it's different, because as long as Pellis is by her side, she feels like she can face anything. Hearing it, Kartha finally relaxed. He could walk away without lingering doubts, knowing that his little playful meddling had actually helped push things in the right direction. Mission accomplished, with a bit too much flair, as expected. Watching Lithera confront her fears head-on, Pellis slowly opens up about his own past. He shares a painful memory. His parents once had a trusted friend, someone they believed in completely. But greed twisted that bond, leading to betrayal, and ultimately, their deaths. His father's final words still echo in his mind. Never trust anyone. Those words built walls around him, making it hard to rely on others. Even so, Pellis chooses a different path now. Because living with regret scares him more than taking the risk. He reached for her, holding her firmly as he confessed that he liked her, and that he wanted to face his fears together with her. She was the one person who had reached out to him first, when he had already shut everyone else out. It wasn't perfect, but it was sincere, and that was what mattered. Now the two of them had one goal, to keep moving forward toward their happy ending together. Not long after, a letter from Kartha arrives. He reports that he handled everything immediately upon returning west, adding that the results should start showing within 1 to 2 months. Efficient as ever. But that's not the only thing he mentions. He also brings up sudden monster attacks happening in the south, and raises concern about what might be unfolding in the north, where Lithera currently is. It seems the original plot is finally starting to move. Lithera reveals everything she knows to Pellis, the truth behind the world's coming downfall, and how they will save it. And just like that, the two of them are climbing a mountain during a full-blown snowstorm. Not exactly a relaxing trip. Somewhere deep in the northern mountains grows a sacred flower, said to hold holy power strong enough to restore balance to the world and wipe out monsters along the way. There's just one catch. Only the chosen one can pick it, which means Lithera doesn't get the luxury of backing out. She has to face it head-on. Good thing she's not alone this time. Pellis is right there with her, ready to see it through. They eventually take shelter in a cave to rest. The cold is brutal, so Lithera stays close to Pellis, wrapped in his coat and his warmth. Turns out the priest wasn't lying. Being near Pellis helps her power slowly return. Convenient, and a little suspiciously sweet. As for Pellis, his face is completely red. The man is overheating, and it's definitely not just because of the cold outside. Lithera casually brings up something from her past life. How Pellis didn't bother helping back then. Not even when the Crown Prince personally asked him. That one lands hard. Honestly, Pellis can't even argue. Before meeting Lithera, he didn't care about the world's problems. His focus was the north, and nothing else. But things are different now. If they want a future where they can actually live in peace with the people they care about, they'll have to stop what's coming. It won't be easy. In fact, it might be the hardest thing they'll ever do. Even so, they're both moving forward with the same goal now. Inside the quiet cave, with nothing but the wind howling outside, the mood between them starts shifting real fast. Come on, you already know where this is going. No need to pretend. Yep, it's kissing time. But this time, Lithera pauses. Wait a second, since when did Pellis get this good? Naturally, she narrows her eyes and teases him, asking where exactly he learned those skills. Because, sir, this is suspiciously not beginner behavior. Pellis, completely flustered, tries to escape the situation. declaring that one day he'll become mature enough that she won't be able to tease him anymore. At that, Lithera admits the truth. She teases him not just because his reactions are adorable, but also because it helps calm her nerves. Pellis has such a strong presence that being playful makes it easier for her to stay at ease around him. Now they're both blushing, and neither of them is winning this battle. Of course, peace never lasts long for them. Right on cue, monsters crash in and romance is instantly cancelled. Within seconds, Pellis is fighting them off. But the cave is narrow, making it harder to move and deal with multiple enemies at once. From behind, Lithera watches anxiously. Pellis had taken off his armor earlier just to keep her warm, and now he doesn't have time to put it back on. Bad timing doesn't even begin to cover it. He fights without holding back, ignoring his own safety entirely. His only focus is protecting Lithera. And that's exactly what worries her. Realizing she can't just stand there, Lithera makes a move. Bam! An arrow flies straight through the air and takes down a monster cleanly. Perfect shot. Pellis pauses for a split second, surprised, and turns around, only to find Lithera standing there with a crossbow in her hands. So she was the backup all along. Concern immediately flashes across his face, but Lithera reassures him. She admits it wasn't easy. Pulling the trigger took effort, but she had Nikki bring her the simplest weapon available. Pellis points out that everyone in the castle can fight, so their idea of simple is completely different from normal people. He asks her to rely on him next time instead. Nice attempt, but Lithera isn't letting him off that easily. With sharp precision, she fires back with words. She calls him out for being reckless earlier, throwing himself into danger without caring if he got hurt. If he expects her to be careful, then he should do the same. Then, as if assigning homework, she declares that the lecture isn't over. They'll continue this discussion tomorrow. Looks like Pellis just earned himself a delayed scolding. And just like promised, the lecture isn't over. They walk side by side, and Lithera keeps going, pointing out every reckless thing Pellis did, one after another, her voice filled with worry more than anger. Pellis, on the other hand, just smiles, soft, a little shy and completely unbothered. His face even turns red as he admits he's actually happy hearing all of it. To him, this isn't nagging, it's proof that she cares. That reaction completely disarms her. Seeing him act like that, Lithera can't keep it up anymore. She grabs his hand and blurts out that this feels like their honeymoon. Big words, terrible timing, because the moment she says it, her brain immediately goes, wait, I've seen this pattern before. Romantic moment equals instant disaster spawn, every single time. And as expected, a massive monster shows up, towering over them like it pays rent on the mountain. As if that wasn't bad enough, the sacred flower Lithera needs is sitting right on top of its head. Of course it is. Why would this ever be easy? Pellis immediately moves, pulling Lithera close as he charges forward, fully prepared to face the oversized nightmare. Lithera admits this won't be an easy fight, but Pellis doesn't look worried. To him, difficulty doesn't mean impossible. And to prove it, he slices off one of the monster's arms in a single clean strike. Lithera can't even hide her shock. That was fast. There's just one problem. The creature isn't staying still. It keeps moving, making her mission nearly impossible. So she makes a bold call. Lithera quickly tells Pellis to throw her toward the monster's head so she can grab the flower. Risky and slightly insane, but effective if it works. Pellis hesitates for a split second, then goes for it. He tosses her upward. Lithera doesn't waste the opportunity. With perfect timing, she reaches out and snatches the sacred flower right off the monster's head. The instant it's removed, the monster freezes, then collapses like a puppet with its strings cut. Now comes the falling part. Lithera drops from above, completely calm, not even panicking. She trusts her husband fully. And Pellis doesn't disappoint. He rushes forward and catches her safely before she hits the ground. Crisis handled, barely. Catching his breath, Pellis mutters that he hopes this is both their first and last experience with something like that. A reasonable wish. Lithera, however, awkwardly admits there will be more challenges like this, just not anytime soon. Far away inside the temple, the high priest remains deep in prayer until something shifts. A powerful surge of divine energy suddenly rises from the north, strong enough to make anyone stop and take notice. Fingers crossed it's not a bad sign for our sweet couple there. Back at the castle, Lithera finally gets a moment to breathe. She sinks into a warm bath, letting the tension melt away as her mind drifts over everything that's happened recently. In that calm, she makes a decision, no more running from her fears. She's going to face them head-on, leave her past behind, and focus on the people she cares about now, especially Pellis. She wants to build real, happy memories with him this time. Reaching for something warm, she casually grabs what she assumes is her shawl, only to pause. That's not hers. It's Pellis's sleeping gown. Elsewhere, Pellis ends up with Lithera's shawl instead, thanks to the servants accidentally mixing up their clothes. A small mix-up, but he doesn't make a fuss about it. Instead, he shifts his attention to work, asking the butler about the progress of extracting the magic stone. He gives clear instructions. Once it's finished tomorrow, the mage tower in the east should be informed. That should quiet their constant complaints about lacking magic supply. Priorities, as always. Then, out of nowhere, Pellis asks Jurgen to check his back for any new wounds. That request alone is enough to make the old butler ask why. It's not something Pellis would normally care about. Pellis, slightly embarrassed, admits that his wife doesn't like seeing him hurt, and he doesn't want her worrying over unnecessary injuries. That answer almost sounds like he's showing off. Jurgen, clearly not interested in indulging that, brushes it off with a casual excuse about his poor eyesight, and suggests that Pellis should just let his wife check instead. Convenient timing, because right then, Lithera walks in. And of course she hears everything. Her expression changes instantly upon learning that Pellis might have new injuries. Without hesitation, she gently begins tending to his wounds. Her touch is careful, but her voice carries a quiet sadness. His body is already covered in scars, and yet he keeps adding more. It's not something she can ignore. Pellis pulls her into an embrace, reassuring her in his own way. Now that someone cares about him, he says, the pain doesn't feel the same anymore. Unexpectedly, Lithera speaks up about something that's been weighing on her mind. She feels uncertain about their relationship and wants to clearly define where they stand. Before she can finish, Pellis gently presses a kiss to her forehead. A quiet interruption, but a meaningful one. He tells her that even if their marriage started as a contract, it's already real. They are husband and wife in every way that matters, and there's no need for her to doubt that. To seal his words, he kisses her again, this time on the lips, making it clear how far they've come. Far enough that even sharing clothes doesn't feel awkward anymore. Speaking of which, Lithera had planned to return his gown, but Pellis insists she keep it, saying it suits her. As he tries to adjust it on her, she shyly points out that the situation feels a little different. Technically, he should be taking it off, not fixing it. That comment completely derails him. Now he's the one flustered, fumbling as he insists on tying it properly. In the end, their playful moment takes a turn when it turns out Lithera caught a cold from their mountain expedition. Not surprising, considering everything they went through. They quickly call for the priest to treat her. Pellis, visibly worried, keeps pressing for answers, wanting to know exactly when she'll recover. Lithera, trying to calm him down, insists it's just a simple cold, nothing serious. Pellis doesn't look convinced. With a firm tone and a concerned gaze, he tells her not to take it lightly. Looks like for him, even something small becomes a big deal when it comes to her. As Lithera is being treated, the young priest attending to her doesn't quite match the role. Turns out he's actually the high priest Astrum hiding behind a disguise. Not exactly subtle, but points for effort. Astrum refers to her as the one chosen by Noatha, a grand title, though Lithera isn't impressed. From her perspective, that so-called god mistook her overworked collapse for death and casually took her soul. Not exactly the kind of being that inspires devotion. Worship? Hard pass. Eventually, Lithera asks why someone as important as the high priest would go through the trouble of disguising himself and traveling all the way north. She already has a pretty good guess. It has something to do with the holy flower she picked. Astrum confirms it. He sensed an overwhelming surge of divine power coming from the north. To avoid stirring political tension with the Empire, he chose to move in secret. A cautious move, and a calculated one. As for Pellis, he acts like he doesn't recognize the high priest at all. Not because he's fooled, he simply doesn't care right now. His attention is entirely on Lithera. Lithera lets out a small sigh, slightly embarrassed, admitting that her husband tends to worry too much about her. Astrum responds calmly, saying he understands. After all, the chosen one holds far greater importance than someone like him. That kind of humility reminds Lithera of how he used to be. In the original story, Astrum was actually one of the potential love interests, a devout man raised within the church, completely dedicated to helping her fulfill her mission. But things changed in her past life. The moment he opposed her exchanging letters with Pellis, she began to distance herself from him. Now, Astrum admits that he originally intended to ask Pellis for help in locating the chosen one blessed with immense divine power, only to discover that it is none other than Lithera herself. Pellis doesn't hesitate either. With a firm expression, he asks the high priest to keep Lithera's divine power a secret. He doesn't want any noble pests bothering her. Astrum agrees, promising to ensure she can live peacefully. Then Pellis makes another request, this time with even more urgency. He asks the high priest to heal Lithera as quickly as possible. Lithera still finds it hard to wrap her head around how worried he is, especially since she's only dealing with a simple cold, so she scolds him a little for overreacting. Holding her hand, Pellis explains that this is the first time he's ever felt this kind of fear over someone being sick. Looking at her with completely unguarded eyes, he asks her to let him be a little selfish, just this once. Lithera softens, finally understanding what he's feeling. She pulls him into an embrace and reassures him that he can be however he wants, so long as he stays by her side. That's all she asks. Later, as the two priests walk down the hallway, one of them remarks on how sweet the couple seems, almost as if they were chosen by the gods to be together. Astrum, however, doesn't share that sentiment, not in the slightest. He even points out that Pellis's reputation will only bring trouble to Lithera in the end. Even knowing that her divine protection grows stronger when she's near Pellis, Astrum believes he could provide the same support himself. And so a plan begins to take shape. He decides, on his own, that separating them might be what's best for her. A noble intention, twisted in a way that could change everything. Days pass with Lithera stuck in bed, and she's officially had enough. She complains to Pellis, saying she wants to move around a little, anything to shake off the sluggish feeling. Being bedridden forever is not her life's choice. Pellis, however, isn't convinced. He stays close, still worried, and casually feeds her slices of apple instead, telling her to take it easy. While chewing on the sliced apple, Lithera starts brainstorming. If she's going to exercise, it might as well be something fun too. So she asks Pellis what kind of activity she could try. Pellis suggests horseback riding once she's fully recovered. Deal sealed. Not long after Lithera gets back on her feet, Pellis promptly brings her to the stables. As they arrive, he casually mentions that the horses in the north are a little different. That was an understatement. The moment Lithera laid eyes on them, she froze. They looked downright fierce, and to make things worse, they ate meat. This wasn't a stable anymore. It was starting to feel like a horror exhibit. Pellis calmly explains that they're mixed with monster blood, which explains their appearance. Even so, they're still obedient and well-trained. Then he introduces his own horse, Sable, the largest one there. No doubt about it, this horse matches its owner perfectly. Intimidating at first glance, but surprisingly gentle. When Lithera reaches out and pets Sable, the massive creature responds calmly, even affectionately. A few minutes later, Lithera is riding, with Pellis guiding her from the side. The pace is slow and steady, giving her time to relax. It almost feels like a date. Pellis, slightly flustered, explains his reasoning. He knows she tends to rush through everything, always trying to solve things as quickly as possible. So this time, he wants her to slow down and actually enjoy the moment. He doesn't want her exhausting herself again. That concern hits deeper than expected. Lithera admits that he's right. Even in her first life, she was always chasing something, constantly in a hurry. And in her second life, she got caught up trying to follow the original storyline, only for everything to end badly anyway. No matter how hard she tried, it didn't change the outcome. Now living in the north should have given her peace, far from the chaos of court politics. But she can't ignore what's coming. The looming disaster is still there, waiting. That pressure keeps her restless. Hearing all of this, Pellis makes a sudden decision. He climbs up behind her on the horse and tells her to hold on tightly. Then he urges the horse forward, picking up speed. The cold wind rushes past them as the scenery of the north stretches endlessly around them. In that moment, Pellis quietly tells her that no matter what, whether she's rushing forward or slowing down, he'll always stay by her side. She won't have to face anything alone. And somehow those are the exact words she needed to hear. As they ride together, sharing the quiet beauty of the moment, they lean in and exchange a gentle kiss. No dramatic interruptions this time, just a silent promise passing between them. Whatever comes next, they'll face it together. Back in the Imperial Palace, the High Priest quietly nudges Crown Prince Everett, suggesting that rescuing the poor Lithera from the monster Grand Duke would do wonders for his reputation. Subtle manipulation? Not really. More like planting ideas and watching them grow. Everett doesn't seem opposed. In fact, he admits that just sharing blood with Pellis makes his skin crawl. That said, he's not exactly eager to put in effort. Since he doesn't even know Lithera personally, he'd rather avoid fighting Pellis altogether. No need to sweat over a stranger. Then his fiancée, Manila, steps in with a plan. She offers to approach Lithera herself, get close, stir doubts about her marriage, and make her regret choosing Pellis. From there, they could use that as justification to convince the Emperor to dissolve the marriage. Seriously, the audacity is impressive. Not long after, Lithera receives an invitation from Manila Teika. In her previous life, the two were actually close. But in the original storyline, Manila's fate was far from kind. She had been Everett's fiancée, the classic obstacle between the prince and the story's heroine. A typical villainess. Powerful, ambitious, and deeply rooted in high society, Manila did everything she could to protect her position, even going as far as trying to eliminate the female lead multiple times. It didn't end well. After the heroine saved the world, Manila lost everything. Reputation, power, even her life. A tragic downfall written from the start. Lithera refused to accept that ending, so in her past life, once she became Empress, she changed things. She gave Manila the position she had always wanted. And just like that, their relationship shifted. Manila became her political mentor and her drinking buddy. Someone Lithera could trust, someone she could speak freely with, much like Pellis now. Ironically, that closeness became one of the reasons Everett grew possessive. Being the center of high society, Manila often hosted events and introduced Lithera to influential figures. It was necessary for ruling the empire effectively. Even so, Everett couldn't stand it. He wanted Lithera all to himself. And his behavior only got worse. He started interfering with her personal life, even showing jealousy toward Manila, his own ex-fiancée. Didn't matter if it was a man or a woman. In his mind, he should have been the only one by Lithera's side. That level of control is suffocating. Hearing all of this, Pellis's reaction is completely justified. Anyone would be disgusted. Why get angry at someone for simply doing her duty as Empress, especially when he played a role in putting her there? Back then, Lithera suspected that Everett just wanted to dump all responsibilities on her while secretly holding power behind the scenes. Pellis, clearly unimpressed, casually suggests cutting the prince's throat if she wants to solve the problem. Lithera immediately shuts that down, pointing out that starting a civil war over this isn't exactly ideal. At least, not yet. As they embrace, both of them share a smirk, more like two people quietly plotting something big in the future. Honestly, they're starting to look like partners in crime. Dangerous couple energy confirmed. Putting that aside, Lithera starts wondering why she received the invitation in the first place. The Teika family doesn't exactly get along with Pellis, especially since he poses a threat to their political influence. Still, Marquis Teika relies heavily on mana stones, which come from the north. That alone prevents him from openly opposing Pellis. Instead, he operates from the shadows, using others like chess pieces, the kind of opponent that's annoying to deal with. Because of that, Lithera considers rejecting the invitation and focusing on uncovering the real reason behind it. But Pellis reassures her. If she wants to go, she should. He figures she might want to see her old friend again in this life and tells her he'll be fine waiting for her. When Lithera asks if he can really handle being apart for days, he insists he'll manage. Barely convincing, so Lithera makes a decision. He's coming with her. After all, they'll need to appear together publicly sooner or later. Might as well use this chance to take control of how the world sees them. On the day of Lithera's visit, Manila waits for the carriage, still trying to process what just happened. She genuinely can't believe Lithera accepted the invitation so easily. That wasn't part of the plan, not even close. Originally, they intended to send invitation after invitation over several months, fully expecting each one to be rejected. Those refusals would then be used as proof that the Grand Duke was keeping his wife trapped. A slow, calculated setup. Too bad it collapsed instantly. Standing beside her father, Manila prepares to welcome her guest. But the first person to step out of the carriage isn't Lithera. It's Pellis. It feels less like a visit, and more like a grim reaper has arrived. No one expected the Grand Duke himself to show up. When Lithera finally appears, Manila studies her closely, and quickly realizes this isn't just some ordinary noblewoman. Inside the mansion, Lithera makes herself comfortable almost immediately. She casually removes her earrings and sets them aside, completely at ease, and completely ignoring proper etiquette. Not exactly the refined behavior one would expect here. Though, to be fair, the reason she even has time alone with Manila is because Pellis already took matters into his own hands, literally dragging Manila's father off to the training grounds earlier. Subtlety? Never heard of it. Watching Lithera, Manila can't help but question lack even basic manners. Lithera doesn't give her much time to think. She gets straight to the point and asks why she was invited. She points out that she doesn't mingle in high society, nor does she offer any political advantage to Manila. So, what's the real reason? Keeping her composure, Manila tries to steer the conversation into harmless territory. She brings up the news of Pellis finally getting married, treating it like casual small talk. Nice attempt, but completely transparent. Lithera sees right through it and decides to push things further. With deliberate carelessness, she nudges her teacup, spilling it slightly, then calmly insists that Manila drop the act and reveal her true intentions. Even though Lithera's bold behavior caught her off guard earlier, Manila refuses to lose her composure. She smiles, keeping her tone light, and suggests they simply relax and chat. Realizing she needs to shake that calm facade, Lithera brings up a very specific topic: her adorable husband, who apparently gets lonely when she's away for too long. Manila's expression instantly stiffens. Adorable? The Grand Duke? For a second, it almost feels like the meaning of the word itself has changed. Or worse. Maybe Lithera is talking about someone else entirely. The confusion is real. Elsewhere, things aren't going much smoother. Tega is struggling to stay composed after witnessing what Pellis just did to his elite knights. What was supposed to be simple training turned into a complete one-sided defeat. Pellis took them all down, using nothing but a tree branch, not even a proper weapon. At that point, it's less training and more humiliation. Out of nowhere, a masked young man steps out from the trees. His voice carries a hint of nervousness as he asks Pellis if he can be taught swordsmanship. Interesting timing. Pellis recalls Lithera mentioning something earlier. If he meets a young man with bright orange hair, wearing a mask, and going by the name Topaz, he should treat him well. Looks like this is him. Pellis asks why he wants to learn. Topaz answers without hesitation. It's to protect someone precious to him. That kind of answer earns respect. Using his free time as an excuse, Pellis agrees to teach him. And then he smiles. To him, it's just a normal expression. Somewhere in his mind, though, he's just thinking that Lithera would probably be pleased with this. Back inside, Lithera is still going on and on about her relationship with Pellis, talking about him like he's the sweetest man alive. Munila, on the other hand, is internally searching for an escape route. Her smile stays perfectly in place, but it's starting to look a little forced the longer Lithera keeps praising her husband. Endless husband bragging, that's a new form of torture. Still, Manila isn't convinced. She suspects Lithera might just be putting on an act to lower her guard with harmless conversation. So she decides to test her. She casually asks if Lithera has ever disliked Pellis, adding that she's about to marry the crown prince herself and can't help but feel concerned. A careful question, but not as harmless as it sounds. Of course, Lithera catches on. She doesn't dodge it. Instead, she goes straight for the truth, asking if this whole invitation was just a setup to get her to complain about her husband, so they could use it as an excuse to force a divorce. She even names the mastermind behind it, High Priest Astrum. Manila is visibly shaken, thinking how Lithera managed to figure everything out so precisely. But for Lithera, the answer is simple. She knows Manila too well. From her past life, she remembers one small but telling habit. Manila hides her true emotions behind her fan, but when she's about to say something genuine, she unconsciously touches her lips. And that exact gesture appeared when she asked about Pellis. That was enough. Add in the kind of scheme being used, and it practically screams Astrum's involvement. Someone willing to cross lines while convincing himself it's for Lithera's sake. At first, Manila tries to play innocent, brushing it off like she doesn't understand what Lithera is talking about. But Lithera doesn't let it slide. She tells her that this is her only chance to be honest. Otherwise, she'll simply ignore every invitation Manila sends from now on. In other words, all that effort? Completely wasted. That's not a loss Manila can afford. Realizing she's been cornered, Manila finally gives in. She admits that when the Crown Prince asked her to get involved, she saw it as an opportunity to gain favor with him later. As for Lithera's marriage, she assumed it was nothing more than a strategic move to elevate her family's status, a miserable arrangement with a frightening man. From her perspective, she thought she was helping Lithera, just as Astrum had described. But now, seeing Lithera in person, that assumption doesn't hold up, because Lithera looks genuinely happy. In response, Lithera smiles and thanks her for being honest. Then, she gives Manila a piece of advice. This world is full of all kinds of people. If she lets go of her prejudice, she might start seeing things more clearly. A gentle reminder, with a sharp edge. Manila can't help but admit how strange this feels. Lithera is being kind, even after knowing she tried to interfere in her marriage. She could have easily ruined everything. Of course, Lithera doesn't sugarcoat things entirely. She warns that if that day ever comes, she won't hold back, and neither will Pellis. Even so, Lithera believes Manila isn't that kind of person. If she truly wanted to harm her, she would have kept up the act and waited for the perfect moment instead of exposing herself this early. There's a difference between ambition and cruelty. And in the original story, Manila only became a villainess because she had no other choice. She was fighting to protect what was hers when someone suddenly appeared to take it away. Looking at things from that angle, her actions make sense. After hearing everything, Manila reaches a decision. She'll tell the Crown Prince the truth, that Lithera and Pellis share a bond that won't break easily. Fighting that would only cause unnecessary trouble. Instead, she proposes a deal. Since this puts her at a disadvantage, she asks Lithera for help when she needs it. In return, Lithera agrees to assist her in any way possible, as long as it doesn't involve breaking her marriage. Elsewhere, Pellis is having his own discussion, though it looks more like intimidation, with Manila's father. The issue? Terrible sword training techniques taught to Topaz. Pellis doesn't hold back, pointing out every flaw, and his presence alone is enough to make the Marquis back down. The Teika family has a tradition of supporting talented orphans, calling them jewels. Among them, Topaz stands out the most. And his reason for wanting to learn swordsmanship? It's Manila. He wants to stay by her side, and to protect her, he needs to be stronger. Pellis lets out a quiet sigh, noting how familiar that sounds. Topaz reminds him of his past self, a man who still needs to learn how to be more greedy. He agrees to help, but there's a problem. They're leaving that very night, so there's no time for proper training. Instead, he advises Topaz to formally invite an experienced knight and learn from someone with real battlefield knowledge. Just then, Lithera spots Pellis outside with Topaz and calls out to him, letting him know she's ready to leave. Pellis doesn't hesitate. He walks over and pulls her into an embrace right there, openly showing their affection for everyone to see. Public display? Very intentional. Before leaving, Lithera waves goodbye to Manila, hinting that they'll meet again soon. Later on, as Manila reflects on everything, Topaz notices something unusual, earrings that don't belong to her. And just like that, it clicks. Lithera left them behind on purpose. So that's what she meant by meeting again soon. As they travel back, Lithera can't help but wonder what kind of expression Manila is wearing right now. Confused? Shocked? Maybe both. The thought alone is a little satisfying. Then, Lithera finally shares her plan with Pellis. She intends to use Manila as a way to get back at Everett, clean, indirect, and effective. No need to get her own hands dirty in politics. She also thanks Pellis for treating Topaz kindly, mentioning that his cooperation makes everything much easier for her. Turns out Topaz isn't just some random talented boy. His real name is Javier, and he's actually Everett's half-brother, which also makes him related to Pellis. The Teika's so-called generosity in sponsoring orphans isn't kindness, it's strategy. A perfect cover to hide the Emperor's illegitimate child among them. From the beginning, House Teika has been preparing to replace Everett with Javier. Manila's engagement, the prince's position, everything was just part of a long game. And in both the original story and Lithera's past life, they almost pulled it off. This time, Lithera plans to make sure it succeeds. By helping Manila, she accomplishes two things at once, getting her revenge on Everett while also repaying Manila for pushing her to marry Pellis in the past. After all, Manila once warned her she'd regret it if she didn't. And that advice is exactly what led to this couple now. Hearing this, Pellis doesn't hesitate. He declares that any past conflict between House Teika and House Termaine no longer matters. Anyone opposing House Teika now is also his enemy. Now, Pellis isn't even bothered by the thought of that family causing trouble later. He already got his small, satisfying win earlier by intimidating Manila's father. Petty or not, he's definitely counting it. What truly matters is this. Because of Manila's push in Lithera's past, he now stands beside her as more than just a friend, and he wouldn't trade that for anything. The moment feels all too familiar, and just like before, it doesn't last long. A knock cuts through the air as Nikki calls from outside the carriage, announcing that they've arrived at the inn. But no answer. Curious, and maybe a little impatient, she opens the door. Big mistake. She walks straight into a scene of the two completely lost in a kiss. Instant regret. She probably wishes she hadn't won that rock-paper-scissors match against the butler just to become the coachman. Inside the inn, after Pellis suffers a very real, tall person problem by hitting his head on the low doorway, the two settle in and fall into quiet conversation like any couple would. Feeling overwhelmed in the best way, Lithera admits how happy she is to have married him. She thanks him for always being there for her. Pellis doesn't let her have the last word. He pulls her closer and says he's the one who's truly grateful. Looks like they could go on thanking each other forever. Realizing that, Pellis suggests they get some rest, especially since Lithera has something planned for the next day. A special place, according to her. That alone sparks curiosity. Next day rolls in. Lithera briefly feels a pinch of guilt for leaving Nikki behind, but Pellis quickly reassures her. Knowing Nikki, she's probably enjoying the rare chance to relax without being dragged into chaos. Honestly, she earned that break. Anyway, Lithera actually brings him to her favorite hidden spot, a place no one else knows about. She slowly opens up, explaining how lost she felt when she first arrived in this world. Her mind carried the weight of another life, yet her new body belonged here. Everything felt unfamiliar. She admits that if she had forgotten her past, adapting might have been easier. But remembering everything only made it harder to accept this reality. It wasn't just a new life. It felt like being stuck between two worlds. Lithera knew the story of this world promised a happy ending. That knowledge gave her hope, but also pressure, because reaching that ending wasn't simple. There were countless obstacles ahead, and even if she succeeded, she had no idea what came after. A happy ending sounds nice, until you realize no one tells you what happens next. Whenever everything became too overwhelming, she would come here to breathe, to think, to escape. But things are different now. With Pellis standing beside her, she realizes she doesn't need a place to run away to anymore. Pellis turns red, clearly caught off guard, though a small doubt lingers in his expression. He's not fully convinced he deserves that kind of trust. Lithera doesn't let that slide. She gently reassures him, telling him how incredible he truly is. After all, who would easily believe a story about reincarnation in another world? Most people dismissed her. Some thought she was imagining things. Others tried to use her for their own beliefs. Even mages only saw her as something to experiment. But Pellis believed her without judging or any ulterior motives. Realizing how lonely she must have been carrying all of that, Pellis quietly expresses his concern. Lithera admits that his kindness is what made her trust him, and eventually rely on him more than she ever expected. Closing the distance, she kisses him softly. In that moment, she understands something clearly. She wants to share everything with him. Every thought, every fear, every piece of her story. Because he doesn't turn away. He listens. Now she no longer feels the need to run. As long as he's there, she knows she'll never feel alone again. Not far from where she's resting, Nikki notices something strange, a glowing light hovering nearby. It almost feels like it's calling out, insisting it needs to be taken to Lithera. Back with Lithera and Pellis, the two are enjoying a rare, peaceful moment together, hoping it might last a little longer this time. But Pellis, ever the realist, points out a pattern. Whenever things get calm and romantic, something always shows up to ruin it. Experience has taught him that much. Lithera, however, brushes it off. She insists this place is different. Nothing has ever disturbed her here before. A bold claim, and immediately proven wrong. A bright light suddenly appears out of nowhere, calling out for Lithera. Nikki rushes in, explaining that she already tried attacking the thing when it called Lithera's name, assuming it was some kind of evil magic. Turns out hitting it did absolutely nothing. The glowing entity speaks, saying it's too weak without Lithera and urgently needs to talk to her. No room for discussion. In an instant, it activates its power and pulls Lithera into another space. Of course, Pellis refuses to let her go alone, sticking to her like glue as he immediately checks if she's all right. Glaring at the floating light, Pellis questions whether it's a threat. Lithera quickly says no, explaining that it's not a monster, nor some random side character. If anything, it's far more troublesome. Then, without warning, the light shifts and takes form, revealing a god. It's Noathe, the very same deity responsible for dragging Lithera into this world in the first place. Not exactly someone worth respecting, more like a walking disaster she never signed up for. While Pellis silently considers whether a god can be taken down, Noathe leans closer, puzzled by his presence. He doesn't understand how Pellis even managed to enter this space without permission. Big mistake getting that close. Using Pellis as support, Lithera reaches up and pokes the god straight in the eye, clearly irritated that he's invading her husband's personal space. She also demands answers. No delays. Noathe finally explains. After Lithera died in her previous life, the world started collapsing. Ruptures formed, allowing monsters to break through into reality. He's been trying to contain it, but he can't fully stop it alone. That's why he needs her. Both Lithera and Pellis briefly consider ignoring him altogether. Honestly, that option looks very appealing. But then Noathe adds a key detail. Every rupture Lithera closes will restore her lost strength. After weighing it carefully, Lithera eventually agrees to help. To support them, the god grants a weapon that will only last 30 minutes. Since Lithera isn't in condition to use it properly, Pellis steps forward as the light forms into a sword in his hand. A glowing weapon that somehow looks more cursed than holy. Pellis grips the black blade, and surprisingly, it feels right in his hand, almost like it was meant for him. With that, Noathe leaves them with a final statement. He believes they can save the world. A lot of faith for someone who caused this whole problem. In an instant, they're back with Nikki, who looks completely baffled after watching them vanish and reappear like nothing happened. No explanation given, no time for one either, because the ruptures start forming right in front of them. Nikki, at this point, is probably drafting her resignation in her head. Pellis immediately moves, holding Lithera securely with one arm while preparing to fight. Nikki steps in as well, daggers ready, doing her best to keep up. The fight erupts fast. Even in the middle of chaos, Pellis manages to speak calmly to Lithera, as if this is just another routine task. His composure is weirdly reassuring. Encouraged by him, Lithera steps forward and uses her power as the Chosen One, successfully sealing the rupture. Just like that, the immediate threat is gone. After everything settles, Nikki stares at Pellis and asks if he's some kind of holy warrior chosen by a god. He doesn't deny it completely, but tells her to keep everything quiet, probably for the best. Then suddenly, Lithera shouts from nearby. Pellis assumes she's upset because her favorite place got damaged. But nope, her real concern. She forgot to ask Noeth to stop the high priest from interfering in her relationship with Pellis. Out of everything that just happened, that's her biggest regret. Her priorities are painfully obvious. Pellis, realizing this, can't help but blush. She's really that concerned about them. Since Lithera needs time to recover and absorb the power she gained, she suggests staying at a ridiculously luxurious hotel, fully aware it will attract attention. And it absolutely does. Newspapers waste no time spreading rumors about the couple making a dramatic entrance, covered in blood, no less. Being low-key clearly wasn't their thing. Other noble guests immediately protest their presence. So naturally, the couple responds in the most absurd way possible. They buy the entire hotel. Problem solved. When Astrum reads about this in the newspaper, he feels the need to take immediate action. Lithera and Pellis have become the center of attention among the nobles. Even Everett notices Lithera has completely stolen the spotlight that once belonged to Manila. Manila, however, isn't surprised. She suspects the Grand Duchess did it on purpose. And if this continues, the image of Lithera as a helpless woman falls apart entirely. No one would believe she needs saving anymore. Worse, her reputation might become so complicated that even if she divorces Pellis, remarriage would be nearly impossible. A risky position, yet Lithera doesn't seem bothered in the slightest. Seeing that, Manila decides it's wiser not to provoke her over something trivial. She informs Everett that they won't be able to carry out Astrum's plan. Everett agrees without hesitation. Truth be told, he was already thinking of backing out the moment he heard the news. Keeping their distance from Lithera and Pellis is clearly the safest choice. At the same time, Cartha suddenly appears right where Lithera is, teleporting in like it's the most normal thing in the world. He's already laughing as he flips through the latest rumors, clearly entertained by the chaos surrounding his best friend. According to him, Lithera hasn't even made her official debut in high society yet, and she's already dominating every conversation in the Empire. Not bad for someone who just showed up. Cartha then shifts gears and updates her on their little scheme, bankrupting the nobles on their list. He presents news about a rising investment trend, along with whispers of nobles secretly expanding their businesses. Those nobles are convinced they've discovered the next big opportunity, but in reality, they're just walking straight into a trap. And thanks to all the attention focused on Lithera and Pellis, Cartha's operation stays perfectly hidden behind the scenes. A distraction this big is definitely priceless. Watching how comfortably Pellis sits there despite Cartha's obvious closeness with Lithera, Cartha can't help but ask, doesn't it bother him at all? That question could have stirred trouble. Instead, Pellis responds with quiet confidence. He says he has no reason to feel threatened. Then, looking directly at Lithera, he adds that as long as he never betrays her, he knows he'll always be her first choice. Lithera can't hide how happy that makes her. There's pride in her expression, like she chose the right person without question. But while the three of them are busy celebrating trust and plotting financial ruin, they overlook one important detail. What about Lithera's parents? Are they really going to find out everything through rumors again? Well, too late for that. The gossip has already reached them, and it nearly sent her father's blood pressure through the roof. And just to make things worse, the one who delivered the news was none other than the high priest. Of course, he didn't come empty-handed. His goal was clear, to manipulate them into helping him separate Lithera from Pellis. But that plan fails immediately. After seeing Lithera with their own eyes, happy, safe, and genuinely at ease beside Pellis, her parents make their stance crystal clear. They won't interfere. Unless Lithera herself asks for it, they refuse to get involved. As for the high priest, they have absolutely no interest in anything he has to say. In the end, Astrum has no choice but to step back and retreat. Back at the temple, Astrum returns empty-handed, only to be greeted by an unexpected sight. Lithera and Pellis are already there, waiting for him. Looks like the hunter just walked straight into the trap. Lithera doesn't waste a second. She immediately calls him out, bluntly pointing out how busy he's been trying to interfere with her life. Caught off guard, Astrum scrambles to explain himself. He insists everything he's done is for her sake, to keep her from making choices she might regret later. Since he can communicate with the god, Astrum doubles down, arguing that Lithera, as the chosen one, shouldn't be with someone who carries such a dangerous reputation in the Empire. He keeps going, and going. At some point, it stops sounding like concern and starts sounding like noise. The couple gets so bored that they casually pull out cards and start playing poker right in front of him, completely ignoring his speech. Nothing says we don't care louder than that. Annoyed, Astrum shifts his attention to Pellis and tells him to be self-aware, urging him to step aside so Lithera can find her true happiness. That's where the line gets crossed. Just as Lithera is about to step in, Pellis speaks first. He admits that he once believed the same thing, that he wasn't good enough for her. But that changed. Lithera gave him the confidence he never had, and since then, he's been trying to become someone worthy of standing beside her. He points out that many people doubted their relationship in the beginning, yet over time, those same people came to accept and respect it. Gently pulling Lithera closer, Pellis looks straight at Astrum and tells him he's been wasting his time meddling in something that doesn't concern him. Lithera is absolutely thrilled hearing that. That's her husband, finally saying what needed to be said. She even promises him a better reward later. Now as for Astrum, Lithera decides he needs a lesson, a harsh one. Having gained power from the very god Astrum worships, she does something shocking. She cuts off his connection to Nothi completely. A direct, calculated move. A reflection of what he tried to do to her, taking something important without considering her feelings. Turning away, she tells him the connection will only return once he truly reflects on his actions. Now that's a punishment that hits where it hurts. After that, she casually tells Pellis it's his turn to get revenge. But instead of escalating things, Pellis simply offers a few words. He tells Astrum that if he truly wants to help someone, he shouldn't force his beliefs onto them. Simple advice, but it carries weight. As the couple walks away from the temple, Pellis quietly admits that Astrum's punishment is already more than enough. He doesn't think the man got off lightly at all, because in a way, even he was forced to reflect. For a long time, Pellis had looked down on himself. Compared to everything Lithera had gone through just to reach him, he always believed he could offer so little in return. That mindset became a habit, one he carried without realizing it. What makes it worse is that Astrum wasn't blindly judging. He had seen how happy they were, and still reached the same conclusion. That stings more than ignorance ever could. It felt unfair, especially after all the effort Lithera put into helping him believe in himself. So, for her sake, Pellis decides he'll try harder to become more confident. But Lithera gently corrects him right away. With a soft smile, she tells him he doesn't need to do it for her. He should do it for himself, because she wants him to value himself just as much as she already does.